Hello and welcome to another episode of Voice of Crypto. This is a podcast where we talk about Web3, blockchain, crypto, metaverse, and everything under Web3. And today I have a very special guest, Vikram here. Vikram is one of his kinds of first guest who has come on our podcast. So I will let him explain what Vikram does and what is all about. Hi Vikram, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Abhishek, pleasure to be here and thank you for having me.
Great. So Vikram, why don't you tell our audiences what is that special skill set which you bring on Web3 and why are you here today?
Yeah, I don't know. I describe it as special, maybe different. So by day, I am a lawyer. So I'm a partner at Hassan's international law firm, which is Gibraltar's leading law firm, has been for 2 decades, also the largest firm. And yeah, so I focus primarily on corporate commercial work. That's where I started out in my practice areas. And, that progressed to private client, finance, M&A, your traditional Web2 practice areas. And then we started the firm's DLT, Distributed Ledger Technology practice area in 2017. And that's also when I started my journey in crypto. And that has been a very long and probably the most interesting rabbit hole in my professional life that I've been down. And obviously, it's very difficult to separate the professional from the personal. So it's also been one of the more interesting, apart from personal, but within the personal sphere in terms of personal interests and investments and opportunities, and really building in Web3 that that I've been down in terms of those rabbit holes. So maybe coming back to what I do in the evenings. So yeah, I am part of, I'm a co-founder of a Web3 project we started 3 years ago. We've built a mobile app that's available on iOS and Android, built around the concepts of self-sovereign custody of digital assets, ID, fully patented technology. So that's really exciting. I invest in crypto. I am a big NFT buff. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Interesting. So which NFTs do you own?
So,
can you reveal the secret on this podcast?
Okay, so I might as well just come out with it and dox myself. So my Twitter handle for my whole NFT persona is @fun_NFT, and you'll see that when it comes to PFPs, I got very big into the artifact ecosystem. They had a proven track record. They were pushing out some really great stuff. So I got into Artifact in August last year when I first heard about their project Akira. And I was just starting my NFT journey then. Just before Akira, I started looking at my Curio cards. They are actually the first art project on the Ethereum blockchain. They predate CryptoPunks by a month. So for me, when I was looking at getting into NFTs, it was purely from an investment perspective. So my thesis was NFTs are the future. The metaverse is the future. People are going to interact digitally. And therefore, what better way to make an investment by entering into historic NFTs? So I did some research. My Curio cards came up. It's something I really liked. I liked the story. I liked the art. And so that's when I started collecting those. Then I heard about Artifact. I got into Artifact. And then even at the time, I remember it was probably around September, late September, one of my work colleagues, and we have a good fraternity in the law firm, where we are all interested in crypto and NFT. And of course, we have we had a a very thriving DLT practice, and we all invest in crypto. It's the only way to fully understand the technology, to understand what's happening in the market. And that's the only way you can give your clients the very best advice. So, we adhered to that philosophy. In fact, I remember when I bought my first Bitcoin in 2017, early 2017, I then said, right, I now need to start understanding this. But before I go down that separate story, just finishing with NFTs, Bored Apes is something that I was recommended back in September September 2021 now. And I think the price was 5 ETH. And I said, why would I put 5 ETH into the picture of a monkey? Not understanding subculture, not understanding. So in fact, I had some very good advice from friends who said I should be buying this because, of course, they thought I was a whale. I had a lot of capital that I wanted to put into this. They didn't. And because they didn't, I said, well, I'm not going to put my, well-earned ETH into this.
Right.
I do have a friend who does have a CryptoPunk 6013. He's also a lawyer. He used to be with us. He's now in London. And he told me buy a CryptoPunk. Again, I didn't listen to that very good advice. And today, here I am trying to, put together the ETH to get CryptoPunks and get a Fidenza and so forth. So I'm very focused on blue chips. Chromie Squiggle is, there's so many. There are so many great NFT projects that have had an impact on the space. Right. Personally, I think we're very early with NFTs. I would say, where crypto was in 2014-15 is where we are today with NFTs. So there's still a lot of room for growth. I think we're going to see regulation coming. There are a lot of scams. I think, issues such as consumer protection need to be there. Standards. There was a very interesting article that came out yesterday on Porsche's NFT. Yeah. They asked the consumers to disclaim the right to withdrawal, which is a European right for a refund when you buy something, and you have 14 days to ask for that refund. So imagine you buy an NFT, under European law, you have 14 days to ask for a refund. So if that NFT within 14 days goes to zero, then all of a sudden you can ask for a refund and just get your mint back. Porsche's lawyers were very, very clever and asked people buying that NFT to disclaim that right.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. So, there are a lot of interesting developments, not only from a technology perspective, from a community perspective, from an application and utility perspective when it comes to NFTs, but also from a legal perspective. And I think we will continue to see that develop. We will see the application of traditional law into new and emerging technologies, not just NFTs. Of course, there's AI, there's AR, VR. There are a lot of areas where you have legal frameworks which are honestly outdated, but where one is forced to interpret them and apply and overlay them to emerging trends and technologies. But that's probably a whole separate discussion.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's to answer in a very long-winded way your question about what NFTs I own. I have a lot of NFTs, a lot of bags. You'll see them on my profile. I enjoy collecting. I enjoy the community aspects. I enjoy the utility aspects. Right. And I do see this as a huge growth area.
Right. And Vikram, most of the people who come on my podcast, this is a standard question which I ask everyone. And I like hearing these stories as well, is most of us got into Web3 crypto by an accident. It was never a planned career for any one of us. We never thought we'll become. And in fact, when we were kids, probably it was not even there. So do you remember that incident, that accident, which got you into this rabbit hole and you started developing interest and started reading more and then finally reached here? Do you remember that particular
I
incident
do.
as well?
That journey was very peculiar. It wasn't an accident, I have to say.
Hmm.
In 2014, our firm co-sponsored a Bitcoin conference in Gibraltar, and that was the first time I'd heard of Bitcoin.
Hmm.
But because we were co-sponsoring that event at a very nice venue, it was the first time we actually introduced Bitcoin to Gibraltar. This is 2014.
Hmm.
It captured the imagination of everyone that attended, including mine. And I remember leaving that conference, going back home and speaking to my wife and saying, I've learned about this fascinating thing called Bitcoin, but I'm not sure about it. Maybe it's worthwhile putting in a few £1,000s and buying Bitcoin. But the reality was I was in a completely different space in terms of not even really focused on investing. And it's only when I did my MBA in 2015 and 16 that I started to unlock a lot of potential that I felt I had, but hadn't really recognized. And that's why in 2017, I had all of this renewed vigor, a lot of ideation, which had been unlocked, to the ability to ideate outside of a career in law.
Right.
And Bitcoin, I don't know how, just, came back to my mind. I had a few friends in the firm, one in particular. Today, he leads, if I'm permitted to say, the Binance operation in Gibraltar. So he actually bought Ripple for me. My thesis at the time was, okay, this cryptocurrency business is great. If it's related to money, then Ripple makes sense. And so I was having a conversation with him, and he said, yeah, I just bought some Ripple. And I said, okay, can you buy me some Ripple? Here's £2,000, buy me some Ripple. And that was the start. That happened on a Friday. On the Saturday, I created my own account. He sent me the Ripple. This was on an exchange called Gate.io. And back then, it wasn't the same Gate.io as it is today.
Okay.
And very, very clunky user interface. But then on the Saturday, I bought my Bitcoin, my first Bitcoin. And then it dawned on me, and I said, I have absolutely no idea what I've done. This is a financial commitment I've made. Let me start learning. So I aggressively started learning, watching YouTube videos, reading as much as I could. And I was dedicating hours every night to just learning. And then I just kept on buying as I understood the thesis, I understood the rationale. And this is something which I think is very important. Yeah. People don't truly understand money, and money isn't taught in school. Right? I'm not talking about how to make money, or how to earn money, or how to save or invest. I'm talking about what money is. What is a store of value, a unit of exchange, a medium of account, right? People aren't taught that. People aren't taught about devaluation of wealth through inflation, through money supply, through increasing of money supply, through economic tightening. Then this is something which I think kids should be taught. I started learning about money in 2017. I very quickly then obviously started looking at altcoins. Well, Ether was the next. And then, God, I started buying everything I could, right? Then we hit a bear market. But in that time, I met a lot of interesting people. So we started the firm's practice in DLT. We had a very supportive government. So lobbying had already been going on in Gibraltar to get the government behind this industry. Thankfully, Gibraltar is a very small jurisdiction. 32,000 people is our nighttime population. It's about 55,000 people during the day because we have a lot of cross-frontier workers, and these are approximate numbers. So we had a good regulator as well, so a regulator keen to get involved. We brought a specialist over, someone who had experience in small jurisdictions in cryptocurrencies, in regulation. Her name is Sean Jones. And she led the charge from a regulatory perspective, from a drafting perspective. We created, we think, as a jurisdiction, the world's first comprehensive, meaningful DLT regulatory framework. And the whole private sector in Gibraltar got behind it, understood it. We went out, we started marketing, trying to put Gibraltar out there as a jurisdiction. Remember, in an environment where there were very few jurisdictions that had actually regulated. Switzerland was one of the other few that had actually, a more relaxed regulator at the time. So there were a lot of serious projects looking for regulation at the time. Obviously, you already had the Ethereum Foundation in Switzerland, so a lot of people were going to Switzerland, but people were looking for other alternatives geographically, from a cost perspective, and so forth. And the whole environment just became very conducive. Our work was geared towards a lot of the ICOs in 2017, towards the H2 of 2017, well into 2018. As a consequence, our network grew, our knowledge and experience grew, our personal investments grew. Not that there was any insider trading, but just it built confidence to look at projects, to analyze projects, because of course, we were understanding that to do due diligence as a law firm before we accepted any clients, we used to have bi-weekly breakfast meetings, amongst partners to look at the volume of applications we had for projects looking to come to Gibraltar to launch their tokens. And I would say we were considering between 10 and 20 ICO applications. This is for people to come, for us to represent them, and we would really go through them rigorously. We'd maybe only select 3 or 4 per week, and those were the creme de la creme that we would, after a lot of due diligence, accept as clients and go through. And actually, we even, through that process, dropped a few clients, people who we thought were trustworthy, were good, who had come through referrals or out the door. We had to turn them away, because whenever we were not comfortable, we would simply, just say, look, I'm sorry, but we've come to the end of the road. Because for us, not only as a law firm, but as a jurisdiction, quality really mattered. And we just wanted to push out the absolute best of the best. And I think we still do that today. Where we've got a lot of the world's big exchanges coming and getting regulated in Gibraltar. But personally, it also allowed us to really look at projects. So of course, one invests in a lot of altcoins, but you understand then what, from a professional perspective and a personal perspective, look for. What are the red flags in the white paper? What are the team claiming they can do, and so forth. So that helped. I then met some people. We started a personal fund, or personally, we started a fund, which was going to be a crypto fund at the time. And remember, this is very late 2017. So we embarked in early 2018 to make this Gibraltar's first regulated crypto fund. It was an experienced investor fund. Of course, by the time we got fully regulated was middle of 2018. We were in the depths of the bear market. The people who had committed to invest were no longer able to meet their commitments. And then by 2020, we had mothballed that. But at least it was a good process, because again, even within the firm, we have the head of the heads of the funds industry. He had started the funds industry properly in Gibraltar, and then at the time he may or may not have been the president, but certainly there was a drive as a jurisdiction, as a firm, to have a framework of best practice and for Gibraltar funds. So it was good to be involved again in that personally and professionally. Continued to meet amazing people. That's when this whole issue of self-sovereign custody was really coming to the fore in 2018. Met some people, met them again, and we decided to solve that issue. So we started the company, incorporated, and just started developing a mobile app. Got our patents in April last year in the US and internationally, and they're still coming through. It's literally next generation encryption technology. And we've already filed additional provisional patents for some incredible innovations that we're pushing through. So it's life during the day and during the evenings is amazing. It's a blessing. Thankfully, my co-founders on that project are in the US, so the timing works really well. I spend my evenings on calls with them and team calls. So, being based in Europe allows me to spend my evenings whilst they are spending their working days, and we just progress matters. It's another blessing. What can I say?
Interesting journey, Vikram. And I mean, you while you're talking about this, I understood that you are living two lives, one in a day and one in night. And so my question to you specifically is, do you think your personal interest in crypto and your professional interest or your professional career as a lawyer, how are they in conflict? Are they in sync? The reason why I'm asking this question is, as a common man, everybody talks about that the laws should be stringent, the laws should be more acceptable to crypto, but what we see currently, and FTX case is a classic example of the technology has gone way ahead for laws to catch up then. Now what we feel and what people think is eventually laws have to be molded according to the technology, not the vice versa. So I want to hear opinion of Vikram, the investor, and Vikram, the lawyer, on this point here.
Sure. So let me just address one thing very, very early, and maybe you didn't intend it when you asked the question, but you mentioned the word conflict. As a lawyer, I understand very, very clearly conflict of interest. So I have always made sure, and my partners always make sure, that anything that we do in our personal life, there should never be a conflict of interest with our professional life. So I just want to make sure that no viewers of this podcast would ever think that there is ever a conflict of interest, and we never ever put our interests ahead of a client's. The actual point is that, and we started the practice, and a lot of our clients will actually attest to this, is because we are personally invested and therefore personally vested with the crypto community. We understand firsthand all of the issues. We understand how to address some of the problems. And by that, I mean, for example, I understand, and when I was talking about that learning process that I went through, I love understanding how things work. So I actually go into the technology. In fact, one of the things I didn't mention is I was privileged enough to be one of the co-authors of the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crimes manuals for training for regulators and enforcers. So even authoring those books continued my education process into the technology. So understanding the technology and understanding the law, what one can then do is say, okay, this is the legal framework. It definitely needs modernization. To the extent the Gibraltar framework, specifically for DLT, is a new regulatory framework that was purposefully built, that works. But it works for custody and transmission of other people's assets. And it is a financial services standard of regulation. When you talk about FTX, that is fraud. That's a Ponzi scheme.
Mm.
You already have traditional, very good legislation and case law that deals with those aspects. Yeah. So we should also be careful not to unnecessarily say that existing laws need modernization. I mean, as human beings, our vices are as old as time, as old as our race. You know, people are driven by greed. People, commit crimes. We have, centuries of case law to address that. And FTX falls very clearly in that bucket. It is not a crypto-specific issue.
Okay.
But when it comes to things like DeFi, when it comes to NFTs, there I do think globally we need bespoke regulation. We should also be careful to understand that it's difficult to regulate technology. You've got to regulate the actors. So, no project starts off as a DeFi project completely decentralized. There is always a centralized seed, and then it becomes decentralized, either over time or through a process. And therefore, the centralized aspect there are the developers, the promoters of the project, and so forth. And when you talk about regulation, you're talking really from a view of consumer protection, of orderly markets, of just providing that stability, financial stability, and assurance. So when it comes to DeFi, of course, you have coders. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that we want to inhibit innovation, but coders should have a code of conduct, right? That they should adhere to. The code that they develop should be mandatorily audited by people who are vetted, people who have experience and skill. There should be some sort of threshold by which, someone who is coding, can put code out into the world for certain purposes that people can use. I mean, can you legitimately have a 13-year-old coder put code out? Sure. But should there be some sort of test that 13-year-old has met certain qualification thresholds, certain quality thresholds, understands the implications, that there are no back doors to the code, that the not only vulnerabilities in the code, but potential mischief through the code are addressed. So I think when it comes to regulating something like DeFi, there are ways of looking always happy to help, always happy to learn generally, and professionally, always happy to provide as best a service as I can.
Great, great. Thank you, Vikram, for your time and coming on Voice of Crypto. It was really an exciting conversations, and is that you are the first lawyer who has come on this podcast, and understanding a lot of points which we don't understand was really very exciting. Thank you again for coming on this podcast.
Abhishek, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, really, sincerely.